Hello everybody and welcome to the channel. This is Recruit Painting, and in this episode of what I'm painting the new Italian Paracadutisti miniatures from Warlord Games, which will be released together with the Armies of Italy book for bolt action in the next few weeks. I have to say the sprue that I was sent was really fantastic. There's lots of options on it. I kept mine quite simple just so that I could slot them in with any future Italian army that I plan to do. So I've gone for rifles, SMGs and an LMG crew there as well. So I've kind of kept it really simple. And with the paint scheme as well, I went for the desert sort of fatigues with these guys that you can see also on the website if you were to go and order these miniatures. So yeah, I just kept it quite simple. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to talk you through how I painted these in this scheme, and how I based them also. So let's get started. The channel is now proudly sponsored by Fog of War Games. Enter code RECRUIT10 and checkout to get an extra 10% off their already discounted items, which include miniatures, hobby supplies, and their own range of basing materials from the Flock and Forge. Enter code RECRUIT10 at checkout. So before I got started, I had a go at doing a test model, and I was quite pleased with how this one turned out in the end. I did have a bit of a mess up with the base, because I did do a muddy base to start off with and then put the basic material over it, and it didn't look too good. So I kind of tried to tidy it up with a bit of painting around it, so the base isn't quite there. But yeah, you can see here that I've got the remaining 5 miniatures all ready to go, all primed in Ghoul grey and also magnetised for easy storage, and I kind of kept them on that as well for a little while. So here I've got the miniature that I'll be painting for this tutorial, and what I'm doing is over the armour detail, over the uniform detail areas, I am going in with Zhandri Dust from Citadel. Just covering all the uniform, not really too worried if I spill over anywhere, because this is going to form that base coat. So with the Zhandri Dust all down, basically covering most of the model, I then got Mournfang Brown from Citadel, and I'm going to use this for those wood areas, so kind of the stock of the weapon system there, we'll get a coat of this, 2 thin layers, and any other wooden areas as well. So once I've added the Mournfang Brown, I then got black from Vallejo and painted all the areas I wanted black on the model. So the boots had a coat of this, as well as the areas of metallic. So the barrel of the rifle and the magazine as well, and any other metal areas, because what I like to do is, if you've watched my previous videos, with my metal areas on historical models, I like to coat them in black and then dry brush them in a dark silver. Okay, so the next step, once that's dry, is to give the miniature a wash, and to do this I use soft tone with a mix of Lamy and medium, so about 50-50. The reason we do this is that because this is quite a light toned uniform, you don't want the shading to be too dark, because it just makes that kind of bringing the lighter areas back, and the transitions between the light and the dark can be quite tricky if it's too dark. So just having that bit of medium in there just really helps to soften those darker areas and just give you a better chance to do those sort of layering steps a little bit later on. So once the wash had dried, it was then time to layer back on the Zhandri Dust in those raised areas, and just bring that blend between the darker areas and the lighter areas. You can see, even though I've mix the wash with the soft tone, sorry, with the Lamy medium, those dark areas are still quite dark. So just this step here is just trying to blend those back together and just make the sort of the transition between the two a little bit lighter or easier on the eye, so it's not so contrasting. So this is what we're doing here. We're just going back over those raised areas with the Zhandri Dust and just blending in those areas with the slightly watered down Zhandri Dust, so about a 50-50 mix of Zhandri Dust and water. So once the Zhandri Dust had dried, it was then time to do the flesh. So for the flesh I used Bugman's Glow by Citadel. You can see here I already started this one already but forgot to film. So here I'm just painting on the face, just filling in the areas of flesh, trying to avoid the uniform that I've already painted. Not too worried about the strap though, because I'll be going back over that anyway. And just filling in those flesh areas with Bugman's Glow. Now before we go too far into the flesh tone with this, I think it was important to do the dry brushing of the silver, just in case I need to go back over that Bugman's Glow because I go over a little bit. So here I just got the Leadbelcher from Citadel and got most of the paint off just so that some of the pigment was left, and just dry brushed those areas quite lightly with a really small dry brush of silver on those areas. So on the all those metallic areas including the magazine, just got a slight dry brush. So once the dry brushing was done, I then did a wash of Reikland Fleshshade over the flesh areas, just being careful not to get that on any other areas that we've already painted. So next up for the leather areas I used Rhinox Hide by Citadel. So there's a strap on the rifle and then there's the straps to the helmet as well, so just carefully painted those areas, again avoiding the areas that we've already painted. Okay, so next up I use black from Vallejo to do the eyes. Now this is how I like to do my eyes. I fill in the eye socket with black and then do the two whites of the eyes in the corners afterwards. This is how I like to do it. Obviously everybody else has their preferences in the way they do their eyes. But this really works for me. I find it easier to get both of the eyes facing the same direction by using this method. Now with the black dry, it's then time to do the pupils. So just using any white, I use white from Vallejo here. Just make sure your brush is at a really precise point. And just be really careful and accept the fact that you'll probably have to do this a couple of times and tidy up, but that's absolutely fine. Obviously the earlier you do this in the kind of the flesh tone areas, the easier it is to come back and tidy it up. As you can see there, I pulled a little bit, so I did end up going back and tidying that part, but don't let it get to you, just keep doing it. I think this eye turned out okay first time round. Yeah, it was alright. So yeah, just go for it. So this is the doing the highlights of the flesh. So obviously it's got that Reikland Fleshshade already on it. So I just went onto the raised areas with a going back over that base colour of Bugman's Glow. I also obviously used this opportunity to tidy up where I messed up the eye as well. And then in those more raised areas with Cadian Fleshtone, just kind of pick out the highlights of the flesh here. I use that just to pick out like the nose, the chin, the knuckles, just any sort of raised points on the flesh. Okay, so the next step was to add colour to the water canteens. So for this I used Fern Green from Vallejo. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on Italian paratrooper colours, uniform colours during World War II, so again, like I said, I'm just copying the artwork that we've seen on the Warlord website, and this green seemed to match that fairly well, so I went with that one for this one, which I'll wash again a little bit later on. And whilst the Fern Green was on the palette, I also used it for the camo pattern, so the helmet itself on this one particularly has a cover over it, so some of them don't have the covers, so I left them in that sort of metallic Zhandri Dust colour, but the ones that have the covers on, I've again tried to copy the artwork that we've seen and just done these sort of like irregular lines of the Fern Green first of all. So once the Fern Green had dried, I then used Chocolate Brown from Vallejo to add the brown colour to the camo pattern. So I just kind of put it in the gaps between the Fern Green and some of the Zhandri Dust so that all three colours could be seen. So just carefully, again, sort of similar sort of size lines just around the helmet. So the next job was to paint the webbing. So for this I used canvas from the Army Painter, which I picked up, I think it came in the US Army paint set, the historical paint set they released last year. So just went around all of those areas of webbing with a coat of canvas, which I'll then wash with the military wash a little bit later on. So there is a model switch here because I did it without realising or filming. So here I just used the military shade from the Army Painter to shade in all of those canvas areas, and also shaded the water bottle as well. And then with the wash dry, it was then time to go back over and highlight the canvas areas. So I just picked out some raised areas with the canvas, just to, again, just add a bit of subtle highlights. So you can see here I'm just picking out the top of the magazine pouches. With that previous model I just picked out a corner of the squares for the magazines. So it's just, yeah, things that you think would just need to kind of stand out. So again, I've gone for the shoulder area here as well. And then once the military shade was dry, I then went back to the Fern Green to add a bit of texture to the water canteen. So just starting from the top, just very fine lines, just going down the water canteen, just add a bit of texture to it. And then I picked out the lid of the water bottle with black from Vallejo. Then with some watered down Mournfang Brown, so you know, probably about 4 parts water, 1 part paint. I then added some Mournfang Brown to the leather areas of the miniature, so the pouch, the sort of the opening of the pouches, picked out some areas on the strap there of the rifle, and then again on the helmet, just had a bit of weathering. And I then used light brown by Vallejo just to add a bit of texture to the wood of the stock of the SMG there. So just again, just a few irregular lines, just to add a bit of texture to it, so it has more of a wood effect. So I used Armageddon sorry, not Armageddon Dunes, I used Armageddon Dust because my Armageddon Dunes pot was empty. But yeah, use Armageddon Dust here to base the model, sort of that sort of base layer, that base texture that we're going to build on a little bit later on. So I added this and then left it overnight to dry. And the next day, once it was dry, I then dry brushed the texture paint with Ushabti Bone from Citadel, and also tried to get a little bit on the boots as well, just so it had that dust effect on the miniature, so it kind of blends the miniature in with the base itself as well. So this is just going to form that base layer before I use the basing material a little bit later on. And this is where the magic happens. So as I mentioned earlier on the video, we're now sponsored by Fog of War Games, and Rob at Fog of War Games very kindly sent me a few samples of his basing materials from the Flock and Forge, and this one, Shetland Ridge Gravel, just looked perfect for that sort of mountainous sort of region. So I thought I'd use that for this tutorial, and I was really impressed with how the material itself came out on the base. So to do this, first of all, cover the whole base with PVA glue, and once you've covered that, then it's just a case of dunking the base into the basing mix once you've given the mix a little shake, just to kind of get all the materials mixed up. So yeah, just dunk the miniature in, give it a little shake, and then tap it from underneath the base just to get all the excess off, and then you're ready to go. Well, once it's dry anyway. So yeah, I just like to leave it to dry, and then yeah, you're good to go. Sometimes it is worth just pressing down on the bigger pieces just to make sure they stay in place. And this is how they've turned out. I'm really happy with this scheme. I think they do a really good job at kind of representing the artwork that you see on the Warlord website, but just in a really quick, easy way, so with very few steps. And I think the final step of adding the basing material from Flock and Forge really sets the scene really, and puts the miniatures in that place where I want them to be, you know, in the mountainous regions of Italy, or in the deserts of North Africa. I just think that the base material works really well for either of those, so really happy with them. So be sure to like and subscribe to this video if you found it really useful, and also if you're in the market for miniatures or basing materials, be sure to check out Fog of War Games, the link's down below, and use code RECRUIT10 to get an extra 10% off their already discounted items. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.